All right. Hey, we are going to dive right into our virus notes today. Our virus notes are going to be a lot like our bacteria notes in that there's a huge depth of content we could go through. We're just going to slide across the surface and cover a large distance of different things virus related. Should be a topic that maybe we're a little bit more familiar with after the last couple of years of COVID and quarantines and all that fun stuff there. So let's dive right into viruses. First up, a stat for you. It talks about a number of mammalian, meaning that they're mammal origin viruses that have yet to be discovered. All right, how do we know this? Yeah, it's based on the rate at which we're discovering new ones each year. And there's ones that are mutating, they're growing in the animal kingdom. Like one, COVID-19 is the perfect example of one that we had previously were unaware of until maybe 5, 10 years ago. So it's the stat for you to start with. Now, with viruses, they are extremely fascinating because we're not quite sure how to label these things when it comes to the tree of life. Okay. Viruses are insidious pathogens. They attack cells from the inside. So your cells from the inside. They use your own DNA and use it against you. A virus cannot be treated with antibiotics. And really, our system right now, we're working on antiviral drugs, but the basic system we have right now is your immune system has to defeat it and then it'll kick it out. All right, that's it. We have things that help your immune system. Like I said, we're just starting to talk about some antiviral drugs, but there's not much out there. And then even then, viruses can lay dormant in cells and come back at a later date. So they have these really unique entities in the world. And like I said, we're trying to figure out exactly how do we classify them? What are they? We know that they're a serious threat. Um, I should point out that this PowerPoint was made and has been pretty much unchanged since COVID. And so these are all things we were talking about before COVID. And then now with the latest coronavirus, it is like, oh, hey, yeah, a lot of this is relevant here. All right. Here's a variety of different diseases. You can add COVID in there with respiratory diseases, or maybe it's a blood disease. We're not quite positive how to label it yet. Anyway, so what are they? All right. First up, they are not made of cells. That's going to be, you saw that on the previous assignment. And that's one of the most unique things about them is they do not have cell parts. All right. We know bacteria don't have nuclei, but also these entities, not only do they not have a nuclei, there's no membrane, there's no cytoplasm, there's no ribosomes, there's no endoplasmic reticulum or mitochondria, any of those things. They do not have cell parts. They do not move, they do not grow. They just are copied into existence as is. They cannot reproduce inside of a host cell. So as we were talking about with bacteria, you set an apple on the counter and let it sit there. You're gonna see bacteria really start to take off and grow on that thing. Viruses, they can't do that on their own. They need you to reproduce. Okay, if you just said, gave a virus all kinds of food and water and all the things they need, they're not going to grow. They need your cells in order to help them reproduce. Really? What are they then? Consist of two major parts. They have a protein coat, and then they have either DNA or RNA inside that protein coat. All right. So if you look at the picture below, there's some kind of a shell around there or an envelope, and then they have DNA or RNA inside there. And once again, they are extremely small, much smaller than a cell, much smaller than bacteria cells. In fact, there's viruses that attack bacteria cells. We'll see those. And we can just barely see them with the most advanced electron microscopes. So this kind of leads us to this. All right, are viruses life or not life? All right, we know that they affect living tissue, but like how do exactly should we classify them? Reasons why we could lump them in with the other living things, and that's kind of the current practice is putting them with living entities as their own branch of the tree of life. They evolve. That's the biggest one, is that they have DNA and they evolve. So they are changing over time. And sometimes they evolve very quickly. You've heard maybe of especially with COVID, the different, I can't even remember the Delta strain or the Omicron strain, or they had a variety of different strains of COVID. That's the virus evolving over time. All right. After millions of times of reproduction, that is changed enough that it is evolving. They respond to their environment, right? So they don't grow or they don't move, but when they bump into your cells, they understand how to inject their DNA into your cells. They have nucleic acid, either DNA or RNA, and then they reproduce with help. So these are four things that non-living things don't do. All right. Rocks do not do these four things. Water does not do these four things. All right. But viruses do. Now, what's the holdup? Why we consider them maybe not life is because one, they don't grow. They're just copied into existence, all right, through your cells. The second one is maybe the one we don't think about. They do not have a metabolism. So they do not eat, they do not drink, they do not breathe, they do not go to the bathroom. They are just there. All right. It's weird to think about, but they can't eat. They don't, there's no purpose for them to consume energy. Right. So a very strange, it's almost like a glitch in our DNA there. They don't have both DNA and RNA. And like I said, they need others to reproduce. They can't make copies of the virus on their own. They need host cells in order to respond to that. I always think of, I mean, it's a little dated now, but I always think of like flash drives or that you see there as a virus. Um, Computer viruses are kind of similar. That flash drive over there on the left, is that a computer? Well, no, it's not a computer. Like we know that. That is just a piece of plastic with a data chip in there, and it has, a few gigabytes of data that it stores. But can it affect a computer? Sure, it's got programming on there. It can infect a computer. It can add different parts to that computer, that kind of thing. Information is what it is. So kind of like with viruses. Viruses are these I said protein DNA entities that are not really doing anything other than infecting other organisms. With viruses, they are parasitic by nature. So they're obligate intracellular parasites. Okay, what does that mean? That mean obligate means that they are required to, they have to live. Intracellular means other cells, and parasites means they exist within those cells at the harm of those original cells. So they have to be parasites. They cannot, it's not like we can put all the viruses out on a farm and they can grow and live happily ever after. That is not possible for them. They are specific to hosts. So there are human viruses, dog viruses, some can cross species. Those tend to be the more deadly ones. We think COVID came from bats originally. And if you think about it, let's start about with specific to host. You're not scared when you're sick of giving your dog whatever cold or flu that you have. Okay. You just know intuitively that, like, okay, I'm not going to get my dog sick, but I could get my family sick. There are some that do cross species. Those tend to be the bad ones, right? Because your immune system probably is not used to fighting something like that. All right. If it does make the leap from pigs to humans, from birds to humans, from bats to humans, that's where it's something that your immune system does not have a lot of experience fighting. And so it takes a while for our own immune systems to build up that immunity to it. And then lastly, it's specific to cells, viruses are. So the common cold is one that affects cells of your respiratory tract. All right, those are the cells that it attacks. That's why those are your symptoms: coughing, sneezing, sniffling. You're not expecting to be vomiting or having to go to the bathroom a lot with a cold, because it doesn't affect your GI tract. Okay, that's what the flu does. And so you have these different areas that get affected by specific viruses. An example of that would be HIV is a particularly deadly one because it attacks your white blood cells. And the next couple of days, we'll be talking about your white blood cells are your immune system. So HIV is so challenging to defeat for a variety of reasons, but one is because it directly targets your body's defenses. All right, that's what it goes after there. On the right, we have a little bacteriophage. That is a type of virus that attacks bacteria. We actually use those for research too. We're doing that later. How do viruses reproduce? One is the Lytic cycle. That reproduction occurs immediately. So the virus gets in, it makes copies of itself, and then that cell ruptures, and there's millions of viral copies floating around your um, whatever system in your body, and then those are going to infect their own cells there. There's a nice video down here from NPR. It's about 3 minutes long showing that. I would suggest watching it, right? The Lytic cycle, that's something that we are familiar with. The lysogenic cycle is a little bit different. The herpes family tends to work in this category, whether it's chickenpox or shingles or cold sores or whatever. Those are where viruses get into your cells and they kind of lay dormant for a while. So they're just kind of slowly reproducing, and then there might be periodic flare-ups of lots of virus or lots of reproduction, but usually just kind of exists within you. We don't really get into a term called vector viruses, but those are viruses that really just kind of live with you. They inject their DNA into you, and that's kind of part of you now. So those are how they reproduce. There's an example of the Lytic cycle, very Microsoft Paint-esque. But here's our virus, that hexagon with its DNA inside. It injects the DNA into your cells. Your cells are tricked. Your cells are tricked, and it uses that DNA and starts mass producing more viruses until the point where your cell actually ruptures and all of these baby viruses are born. Baby viruses as in new, not as in young, because remember, they don't grow. Lysogenic cycle is similar, but it flares up years later. All right, let's kind of skip ahead here a little bit. We're not too concerned about those things. Same thing there. Okay, 2 more slides here. Emerging viruses. Why is there, okay, where are these things coming from is a good question. Like, why is all of a sudden we have something like a COVID-19 or HIV or the older ones, Ebola, bird flu, SARS? Like, where is that? How do they come into existence, I guess would be the thing. 3 ways. One, mutations of known viruses. Okay, influenza is the most harmful virus on the planet, and it is constantly mutating. All right, that's why we get the flu more than once, is that it is based on its genetic material, it's a fast mutator. And so every couple, maybe even every couple seasons, a new flu exists, and it's just slight mutations. The second one, viruses can be exposed when new areas are developed. So as we're expanding our civilization, 2 things happen. One, we cover more area, and we're exposed to more places on the planet. And 2, we are more connected as a society than ever before. You can get on a plane and be across the world in 24 hours. And maybe some of us here in class actually came from across the world to Minnesota. And that melting pot of globalization means that viruses that maybe were isolated to different hemispheres are now moving at a much more free rate. And then the last one are things that could jump species. Okay, so as we talk about the avian flu, the swine flu, COVID-19, those that viruses that have existed in those species for years, hopping over into humans there. And then our last slide here is just one quick thing. Oops. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay, one quick thing here. Something that you might hear of that are related to viruses, but they're even less structured. Viroids and prions. Prions are just a rogue protein. Okay, so if we get into looking at things as you guys are researching diseases on mad cow disease, Kuru, and the infamous cannibal tribes, those are proteins. They're not even genetic material, but they influence other proteins around them and cause issue there. That's why it's never a good idea to eat meat from species that are very closely related to yourself, because your proteins are so similar. Sometimes your body has a strange time breaking it down, and that causes issues in there. All right. So we're going to stop there with our virus talk. That was a lot of information. Use this video as a resource as you're working on things.